Hello and welcome to the Disable the Label podcast. I'm your host, Kerry, and on our podcast we'll be chatting about all things disability, holidays, equipment, therapy, funding, you name it, and we'll talk about it. We want to empower and support parents of disabled children across the UK whilst they navigate their child's life. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get into it. This podcast is sponsored by Tree of Hope. Tree of Hope are a children's charity that helps children and young people with a disability or illness by supporting their families to raise the funds that they need to pay for specialist care and equipment that is not freely available through the NHS. If you want to find out more about Tree of Hope, check them out on our app, Disable the Label. On this episode, we're joined by Lorenza, who's come to talk about her experience with her daughter Eliza, who's growing up with a disability. Right, what are we waiting for? Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today we have Lorenza. Lorenza, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, thanks for coming on. I like most people to introduce themselves because it's much easier as I don't know you. So introduce yourself, tell the audience who you are and why you're here.
Yeah, so like you said, my name's Lorenza. I'm here today to talk about my daughter, Eliza, who's got complex medical needs. She was born with a rare syndrome called Charge syndrome. It's quite a complex syndrome. It varies from each child, so each child's different. So I won't go into too much detail on the syndrome. I'll just talk a little bit more about Eliza and how it affects her. She was born with quite complicated airways and had a tracheostomy for many years to help her breathe. We have been trachea-free for nearly 2 years now, so that's good.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. She's tube fed. She has difficulty swallowing, so she takes all her nutrition via a G tube. She has lots of different challenges that she overcomes. I won't go into too many detail about them all.
So obviously you said that she's had difficulty since she was born. So when did you get the diagnosis of Charge syndrome?
So it was quite clear very quickly after birth that Eliza had been born with some breathing difficulties, but it wasn't actually until around 6 months old we got the Charge diagnosis. So Eliza spent the first, I think, roughly around 10 weeks in hospital. So she had quite high intensity support for the first 10 weeks of her life. That's when she went through many operations and procedures, and at 6 weeks old she had the tracheostomy. So it was quite an intense time, but the question of Charge syndrome was around that time. It wasn't until 6 months old we got the actual diagnosis.
Okay, right. And so as you said, Charge syndrome is different for every child or person that gets diagnosed. Yeah. So what are her key, I suppose, symptoms, I suppose?
Yeah, so how it affects Eliza, she's deaf in both ears. So she's a hearing aid user. So she has a profound hearing loss in one ear and a severe in the other. So it impacts her on a daily basis. She was non-verbal for such a long time. I think it was round about, it's all the numbers, they're all muddled up, so much going on. Around 4 was the first words we ever heard from Eliza. Up until that point, she was non-verbal due to the tracheostomy. She had trouble bypassing the trachea. So she went from non-verbal to coming out with 4 quite complex sentences. So yeah, it was quite a shock. And due to her being non-verbal and deaf, we learnt sign language as a family. Eliza uses both British Sign Language and speech to communicate. Also, as I mentioned, she's tube fed, so she is currently nil by mouth. She's not allowed any tasters, textures, drinks, or anything orally at the moment. Feeding's been a little bit of an up and down process. There has been points in her life where she's been allowed to take things orally on small amounts. And around 6 months ago, we was told to go nil by mouth for the first time, which has been really difficult to adapt to explain to the 6-year-old that before you could enjoy an ice cream, but actually now you can't enjoy the ice cream or a drink. So it has been a really difficult transition, and we're still trying to transition over to nil.
Totally. Yeah, that's really difficult for anybody, but especially a child that kind of doesn't necessarily understand why. And like everybody, if once you've tasted something, taste is such an experience, isn't it? So that's really hard. You know, even just changing what you eat and not being able to eat something that you really enjoyed before is massive. But not being able to have anything at all, that's a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it has been difficult, especially with the recent hot weather. Summer and the heat is normally where Eliza would eat the most. I guess ice lollies, ice cream, drink, all those consistencies which she was allowed was quite heavily summer based. So summer so far it's been quite difficult, and to keep hydration levels up.
Yeah, totally. I can understand that. Yeah. So what was your experience of disability, deafness before you had Eliza?
I've had no experience, I guess. So I talk about Eliza's deafness quite a lot, because I now teach sign language. So it's quite a conversation that I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
My perception of deafness, I guess, like a lot of people before Eliza, I just assumed older people became deaf, and the children had hearing also, which obviously having Eliza, which changed my view on this. When I found out Eliza was deaf, I was I was really upset. It was one of the things that affected me the most. I think because it was a visual thing. We already had the tracheostomy at this time, and then adding the hearing aids in, it felt like the cherry on top of the cake, I guess. After having all the other challenges to overcome, and I had no experience, I guess, with disability or inclusion, or I'd never really come across anybody, I guess, to make me question or try and learn more about disability or inclusion. So I do feel like Eliza has changed me for a lot in the better. Has completely changed my perspective of the world, and in how to include a lot easier for everybody else, not just Eliza.
Yeah, it's crazy the different worlds, I suppose, with disability and even, just deafness in itself. But you've clearly taken it in your stride and learnt so much from her, and it's changed obviously your life. So what were those first few years like in Eliza's life for you guys, for you, for her? How was that quite difficult to navigate? Did you obviously struggle at first and then kind of come into your own and be able to navigate it a little bit better? How was that for you?
Extremely difficult. So from going from having, I also have an older daughter. So going from that experience to having a happy, healthy child born with no medical condition, to happy, healthy pregnancy, to then going into labour, and then shortly after birth realising that actually she's seriously unwell and possibly might not survive. It's quite you've just given birth, so that's traumatic in itself. But then to try and understand and come to terms with what is happening, you don't really have time to process, because you're in it, you're living it, you're overcoming. It's one drama, one challenge, you overcome that, then you think, oh, we've overcome this, but something else. So we overcome the next challenge, and we were bouncing from one obstacle to another. We'd finally relax and think, yes, she's looking good, it's looking positive, we could be home in a few days, and something would change, we'd find something different. So extremely difficult. I think while I was in it, I was just bouncing from the next challenge. I was focusing on how we can overcome this one and move forward to move on to the next one. And my aim was, just to get us home at that time. But weirdly, I know this is a question that you were thinking of asking. The hardest day for me, the day I was wishing for the minute she was born, was the day to take her home. That was the hardest day, which I wasn't prepared for. You know, you've just been born with a medically complex child. You're asked to do CPR training before you leave the hospital, because there might be a strong possibility you're going to have to use that when you take your baby home. So to do that, and you're taking a child home with a tracheostomy that I'd never even heard that word before. I've never seen a tracheostomy. To go home with that baby without the doctors and the support of the nurses, which I'd had for the last few months, was an extremely difficult thing to do.
Yeah, totally. That's a massive jump to go from, you know, and that day for a lot of people is a really happy day, isn't it? And I'm sure it was also for you, but at the same time it comes with so many different complex things that your brain is having to understand. And like you said, you're going from somewhere that has constant medical support help for you to home where there's nothing, you know, nobody's just around the corner or just through the other door, and you're having to make sure that you know as much as possible. And obviously, you know, things are learned over time, especially with tracheostomies. You know, they're not simple, as you're probably now very much aware, and it's very hard for anybody to understand and take absolutely all that information in, whilst also thinking I'm bringing my child home. Like, should be a great experience, you know. So were there any professionals at that point in time that you feel now that you couldn't have gone through that without, that they were really supportive and helpful?
So me and Eliza have been very fortunate. We've had a very strong professional network around us from day one. The community team have been really supportive, so helping with the transition from hospital to home. We have always had a strong network of professionals around us, and we've been quite lucky in that sense.
That's really good, I think, because that makes a massive difference. Like, I'm really glad for you, because obviously I've heard experiences that have not been great, obviously, even just in that hospital kind of place, but especially at that point in time, that's a really difficult time for you guys. So I'm really glad you had great professionals there, because that really does make a massive difference. So then, okay, the question is now, so Eliza's getting a bit older. Does she go to a mainstream school? Does she go to special school? And why did you make that decision?
So it wasn't an easy decision to make. I viewed so many schools. I viewed special schools. I viewed specialist deaf schools for Eliza. I viewed mainstream. And it felt like the biggest decision ever. It felt like the world was on my shoulders.
Yeah, I bet.
Which was the best place for her. In the end, we chose mainstream because we felt that personally for Eliza, that was the right place for her. But we assess it year on year. So if we find that we get to the point where Eliza is no longer happy and thriving in mainstream, then we will look to move her to another school. But at the moment, she seems to be coping really well. She enjoys school. She's got lots of friends. She's happy to go. And that's all I want from her, really. I want her to be happy.
Yeah, totally. I'm so glad for her and for you guys, because that is an experience. It's a lovely experience to have. And you're right, every year is different. So having that, like, navigating it just year on year and base it done through that is the best way, because, as you know, we're both aware, school changes dramatically throughout the years. There's big jumps, you know, at all the times, and even just from primary to secondary, that's a massive jump in itself, and that's a navigation in itself that's obviously going to come for you. But I'm really glad for you guys that she's thriving and having a great time in mainstream, because it sounds like, you know, for her that's a really great thing. What
I'm not saying so. One-to-one support in mainstream, full one. And I'm not saying she doesn't have a challenges at mainstream, but she's my age. Like I said, I want her to enjoy school. It's a bonus if she manages to keep up with some of the educational sides of school. It's about And for me personally, I want Eliza to be surrounded by lots of different people. So I want her to be surrounded by lots of children, SEN children, mainstream children, just children in general, you know. So there's children like her, there's children that are different, and I just think that's a really positive thing for Eliza, for her to learn that we are all different in different ways.
Yeah, totally. I think that's amazing. Does she have any other SEN in her class, year, or like is there any other kids with SEN throughout her school?
Yeah, she's lucky. There is a few, so and she is really good friends. They have made some really good friendships. So she is lucky. The school has quite a few SEN children.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult always to get the right balance, because you could be in an area that has an absolutely unbelievable special school that would have been right for her in so many ways, you know, and it is a really difficult decision. And you're never ever going to know if it's the right decision, even afterwards. You know, and I think that's the way for anybody sending their kids to school. You know, I've worked with so many kids over the years, and it is a constant thing to keep checking up on and making sure that it's right for them, because the school is ever changing. Like, head teachers change, the teachers change, TAs change, you know, loads of things that are changing constantly. So yeah, I'm really glad that it's going well, and obviously there's going to be some difficult and hard times within that, but yeah, I'm really glad for you both that that's really, really good and positive thing. So what things would you say have helped Eliza so far in her journey?
Eliza. So Eliza, she's got a really strong determination.
Yeah.
She's just got a willingness to try and overcome. She finds a way of getting her way around of doing things. She's quite fiery. And, you know, I meet some of the consultants now who remember her from the early days, and they still refer to her as a fiery baby. She had that fire, she had that fight, she wanted to be here, and she fought damn hard to be here, and you could see it then. So she just doesn't let anything faze her, you know. I sometimes think about all the medical procedures and things that we've done to her and how she cooperates, and sometimes it just breaks my heart how much she cooperates, because she's just a willing, she's used to it. So she got the I'm just going to crack on attitude, which is good, but it's also heartbreaking to watch as a mum sometimes when we're doing things to her that, you know, it's not pleasant.
Yeah, of course.
Also, I guess I've got to take some credit. My willingness to, so it wasn't easy, like we said, the early days, but I wasn't letting that stop. You know, I had a baby with a tracheostomy. I didn't want to stay in. I didn't want to keep her at home and shelter her from all the germs, the endless amounts of infections. We got readmitted to hospital. It was like every month was a new hospital stay because it was a new infection. But I wanted her out in the world. I wanted to enjoy the world like everybody else. I wanted her to meet other babies. I wanted her to have fun. So yeah, I guess my determination of we will still enjoy life. We won't let this determine whether we do certain things.
Yeah, that's amazing, honestly. Like, you should be so proud of yourself for going through all of that and also still having that attitude, because it really can swing one of two ways. The way that you've gone, where you're like, I'm not gonna let this stop me. I'm gonna give her everything she needs, everything she wants to do. I'll let her do, you know, I'll let her try once, you know, and trust that she will tell you if she doesn't enjoy something. Or you go the flip side where it's a struggle and you don't know how to navigate that, and you're a bit scared of leaving the house, a bit unsure about meeting other people, or questions that people might ask you. You know, there is those two sides, you know, and I've worked with both parents and types of parents, and it's difficult. There's difficult times on both sides, but I think being that way and showing her that you shouldn't be scared about going outside and experiencing life, because she should have that opportunity to do anything that she wants to do and enjoy, see other people, meet other babies, like you said, and enjoy her life, because that's what life is about, isn't it? At the end of the day, if she's not enjoying it, then, you know, it's it's sad. So I'm really glad for you, and you should be super proud of yourself, because that is an amazing achievement. And as you've said, you've come through, you've learned sign language, you're now teaching it. Like, that's a massive step as well, like, compared to not knowing anything about disability, not knowing anything about deafness. That's two different balls, isn't it, really? So you should be proud of yourself, and it is a massive thanks to you. So that's the good, but what would you say has hindered Eliza's journey so far? Like, I don't know whether for you've had any really bad experiences that you wish couldn't have happened, or people not treating you guys the best way, something that might have potentially hindered you guys in some way.
We have been quite lucky in that sense. We've not had anything too negative happen. I mean, going back to those early days where I said I was going to go out, we went to baby groups. So we would go to general mother and baby groups. I'd turn up with my suction machine, which is very loud. She had a G-tube at the time. She had a tracheostomy. I'm still hormonal. She's only a few months old. I used to cry on the way there, cry on the way back, because I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be surrounded by all these mums talking about how joyful their last few months had been. But yeah, so people, and she will get people stare now. She will get people asking questions. But I don't think it's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It depends on how you've asked. I really don't mind being stopped and people asking questions about Eliza. It depends how you ask me, why you want to know the answer. That's how we educate. Yeah. Many of children, she still has the tracheostoma, which we're waiting to be closed. Mm-hmm. Child recently asked me why she got a hole in her neck. It's a fine question to ask. They're a child. They are wondering why she's got a hole in her neck. Yeah. So it's for me to educate and tell. So we have been lucky in that sense. We haven't had anything too negative. I think Eliza is just starting to realise now she is different. Mm-hmm. So we're going through a little bit of emotional phase where we are realising we're different. So we've got lots of questions at the moment. So it's not necessarily from other people, it's Eliza realising she's a bit different. So we've got a lot of discussing we're doing on that at the moment.
Yeah, that's a really difficult stage, because everybody is different. Not one person is the same as another person. And but that's hard to see when she has visual things, like you say, that show she's potentially more different than others. But everybody is completely different. But those, I know, having worked with kids from the age of 0 up to the age of 15, that is there was always questions of but then I've also got to the stage of where kids have got into their 15s, 16s, and they're like, yeah, this is the way I am. If you don't like me, I don't care. And that's like amazing as well, because that's the way, everybody should end up being. Like, you are who you are, and be proud of who you are. So I know, obviously, having you by her side, she's going to have that lesson and being taught that, because, you've clearly already shown her already. So yeah, I think it's difficult, but it will become a little bit easier, hopefully, in the future with that kind of side of things. Yeah. So have you had any specific professionals that have been helpful so far?
So many. We've got a really supportive community nursing team. One lady in particular, one of the nurses, is really supportive. If I've got a problem, I can ring and she'll support us. We've had a lot of support from speech and language. So she went from non-verbal to full sentences, but there wasn't very clear sentences. Yeah. So she's had very intense speech and language, and now her speech, you wouldn't have, if you met Eliza now, you wouldn't believe how far her speech has come. So with just so many, she's had an amazing teacher of the deaf supporting us at home and in school to help children and schools take sign language on board. And yeah, the list is endless. We've had an amazing ENT surgeon who's done every airway surgery, and we've had just so many.
I'm so glad. Yeah. I think actually the one that comes up the most is a teacher of the deaf.
But everybody who
Yeah,
I've spoken to that have a child that's deaf said, oh, their teacher of the deaf has been absolutely amazing. And I remember one mum I spoke to, she was actually moving from one area to another. She's like, I'm really worried, but I've met the teacher of the deaf and she's still really nice in the new place. And it's like, yeah, that's so great, because, you know, like I said earlier, professionals can really have an effect. If you have one negative person within your professional multidisciplinary team, it can be have a dramatic effect, can't it?
yeah, definitely. I'm not trying to paint a
Oh
rosy
no,
picture.
no.
You know, medical professions is a full-time job in itself. So when you're navigating, I think she's probably got about 20, 25 professionals involved. You know, navigating those. I think sometimes things don't get done as quickly as I would like, or chasing up. So, you know, I do understand the struggles that we have with professionals sometimes, and waiting times, but also you have to be mindful that she does get the support that we're looking for.
Totally. So you've mentioned one of the hardest times for you. What has been one of the best times for you guys?
There's been a few. Well, obviously removing the trachea that was a strange time. I expected it'd be out and it would be overwhelmed with absolute joy, which it was, but the fear wasn't also removed. So with the trachea, but we're still going home with the potential that actually the trachea might go back. There's still that question, isn't there, of fail or not. So it took quite some time for me to adjust for the no trachea, which I wasn't prepared for. But it was a day that we'd been waiting for a long time. We had a very expensive bottle of champagne waiting for when we got home. So that is definitely a highlight. But there's been so many along the way, just all the little achievements, you know, when she's just hitting the milestones. I don't really compare her to anybody else. It's when she hits or achieves something, I just celebrate every little achievement.
That's the best thing to be, and that's the best way to be, because one, comparing, it's not helpful. I mean, I've worked with so many kids, and some parents have been like, oh, he's the same as so and so, and I'm like, no, they're all different. Like, you might have the same diagnosis, but each child's attitudes are different, each child's, you know, academically is different. Like, there's so many things that are different, and so just focusing your child as it is, but also, like you said, celebrating those small things. Like, I couldn't ever push that enough when I was a therapist. Like, you know, I had one child that just used his index finger for the first time, and I was going like crazy, and his mum was like, yeah, that's great, and I was like, no, this is really good, you know. And even sharing that on social media, the kids that I taught to walk, they would get a massive amount of celebration, but those kids that were using their fingers for the first time, it's like, yeah, okay. And actually that's massive, right? For that child, you know. So celebrating the small things is just as important as those massive milestones.
Everything's an achievement, isn't it? Like you said, you know, when your child's behind, and like you said, the little things like that, you know, to other people, maybe fastening a button to Eliza, which she's recently done. That's amazing, because we've got to nearly 7 and it's been difficult. So now, celebrate that you've done a button rather than just spin past it.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so what advice then would you give to another parent going through a similar experience to you?
So my advice would be to someone at the start of the journey. I'm not always this positive. You know, there is hard days, there is hard times. It does get easier. So you have to remember, I'm 6 years on from you. So I've got a lot more. I've done a lot more. I've dealt with a lot more. But I've also grown as a person. So it's about just thinking about your journey where you are. It's fine to have a down day. If you're not ready to get up that day and go out and face the world, that's fine. It's about trying to see the positive, and I know it's difficult, but try to see past all the trauma, I guess, all the trauma, all the negativity, and try and cling on to that positivity and try and build the strength to carry on if you can, and if you are struggling, to get the support that you need.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, amazing advice. So then what would your advice be for if you met a child that was going through something similar to Eliza?
I would say a bit like what we said, we are all different, everybody's different, and that's amazing. Life would be extremely boring if we was all the same. We're all unique. Celebrate it. Don't ever try to be something that you're not. It's amazing and it's wonderful to have something special about you. So show it to the world, let everybody see. Don't hide away. Don't hide away at home. Don't hide your hearing aids or your tracheostomy. It's fine for people to see these differences. And I do feel like the world is becoming a little bit more inclusive. So seeing things, we're starting to see them come through in the media, and just out in the world. So just go out. There's a big world out there to be enjoyed.
Yeah, totally. That's so nice. Totally. How can people then follow your guys' journey?
So you can find me and Eliza. We're on Instagram, so it's Charge Onwards and Upwards. And you can also find us on Facebook. It's Eliza Says. And we also have an app you can download for free, which is Eliza Says. And it's just teaching basic sign language. My aim is to teach as many people basic sign language. So if you meet anybody who is non-verbal, just being able to say hello and ask you how you are will make that child all right.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And it's interesting when somebody asks me, like, oh, can you speak another language? I always say, well, yeah, I can sign. So, and that I class as another language. It totally is. And people need to start classing that as a second language because, it frees up so many people and makes them feel included and understood. So yeah, I totally agree on that one. That's amazing. And it's great about your free app as well. So yeah, definitely get and download that for people that want to learn a little bit more. It's really, really helpful to learn. And you never know when you might come in handy for you in the future as well.
Yeah, definitely. You never know when you're going to meet somebody who's non-verbal.
Totally. And it could be the start of a conversation that you meet somebody, and that could be, click for the rest of your life that you've met this person, and just being able to say hi has helped you, because I'm sure somebody who signs will try their best to be able to teach a little bit more in a conversation, and do their best to do so. So amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been so fantastic to speak to you.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Disable the Label podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment to let us know what you thought of this episode. More episodes will be coming soon, so make sure you tune in. Don't forget you can download our app for free via the App Store. That's Google Play or Apple App Store. Just search Disable the Label and you'll find us.